In this video, I'm going to show you what working in small steps look like. You will see how I catch bugs sooner by integrating my code more often, leading to a near zero friction development experience. I'll demonstrate working in small steps by working on a story in RLCI. RLCI is a continuous integration system that I'm working on. I've made several videos about it here on my YouTube channel, and you can find more information in the README file on the GitHub page. The story I'm going to work on has to do with two people trying to trigger a pipeline at the same time. Let's see the problem. So here is one way to trigger a pipeline in RLCI. So we SSH into the CI server, we invoke the RLCI command line application with the trigger argument and then pass the name of the pipeline. If we run this, it will do some stuff and it will exit with a 0. If we have a look at the website and the web interface to the CI server, we can see that the test pipeline was run. It doesn't actually do anything except create an empty workspace, but that's fine for our purposes. So now the problem is, if you try to run this at the same time, so I have two terminals here, and if I try to run these at the same time, we'll see what happens. So I try to start them at the same time as possible. So bam, bam. Both finished. Let's see. The first one got an exit code of 0. The second one got an exit code of 1. We expect both these to pass. They should both be triggered and processed. The problem now is that the CI server only handles one request and then shuts down. It is restarted by supervisor, but when it shuts down, all pending requests fail. In the previous video, I talked about how to write reliable socket servers that can handle all requests, even in the event of a crash. I want to use that approach here. So here's how I work towards that solution in small steps. So the supervisor configuration looks something like this. This is from the README file. I just documented what's on the server, and hopefully it's correct. But it runs the RLCI engine, which in turn starts listening on a socket and starts serving requests. But with the new approach, we want to split this part into two. So we want to split it into one process that just listens on a socket, and then the RLCI engine part will accept connections on that socket. So let's see, I think we need a new file here, which will be this implementation of the listening on a socket and spawning processes to accept connections. And what are we going to call it? Let's call it okay, so let's see, we open up RLCI server listen.py, and I expect this to be called something like this. So Python RLCI server listen, and then the name of the socket, and then the program to run. Something like that. And in our case, the program to run is the RLCI engine, which we need to modify to accept connections instead of listening on connections. The first thing I do is to create a new entry point that supervisor can call. Eventually, this entry point will listen on a socket and then spawn child processes to accept connections. But the first tiny step is to just have it call the original server to make sure that the change in supervisor works. Time to integrate. So now on the CI server, we have this new wrapper script available. So what I'm thinking is that now we modify the supervisor configuration on the CI server to actually run this this wrapper script instead. And oh, I forgot one thing. We want to, well, let's just do it like this. Sure. Okay, so let's see. Let's just go there. And we have so now we can write Python opt RLCI current RLCI server listen, and we pass the command that we want the server to run. So like this. Yes. And now we can do system ctl let's just restart supervisor. Now supervisor should run the server via the new script. I test that it works by integrating a change to the README file to update how supervisor is configured. Time to integrate. This is taking way too long. What's going on? I ran into an integration failure here. Why? I only made a change to the README file, and the previous change was to start the server via this wrapper script. Since those were the only changes, I could quickly rule out many causes of error, because I know I hadn't changed much. And quite quickly, in about 5 minutes, I figured out what was wrong. So the problem was actually a flaky test that had always been there, but the flakiness hadn't yet been exposed. I solved the problem by rerunning the test and adding a note to look at the flaky test. I realized that I forgot the socket argument to the server listen script, so I add that. Time to integrate. Then I modify the supervisor config to add the socket argument and then restart it manually. To test that it works, I once again update the README. Time to integrate. Next, I modify a test for the socket server to start the server in test mode via this wrapper script. The test here, we had some code. Let's see if we can bring it back. So when we start the server in the test, instead of just running this code, we run the server listen py script. We pass in the socket, which is ignored for now, and we then have the command to start the server. So let's see if that works. It does? Okay. Time to integrate. Are we getting the error again? It turns out I get the flaky test error again. It's time to do something about it. For now, I increase the sleep time to make the timing issue less likely to happen. Time to integrate. Now it's finally time to move the socket listen functionality into the wrapper script. Let's see how. We start the server via this, and okay. So what I want to do now is to say, just want to keep the test as is for now, and replace this this part with something else. So I'm gonna have a look at my article, reliable socket server, to see how to do this. So I want to do something like this. Socket file. Okay, something like this. So here we want to say self.socket socket file no 0. And we can probably say family as well. Something like this, and this right here is going to move in here somehow. Okay, so what errors do we get? Connection refused. So I expected this not to work because yeah, we're now trying to open a socket on file descriptor 0, which we haven't created. So maybe we can just do it here and do this part right here. Path right here is the socket, so like that. Remove the path, create the socket, we bind to path, and then we need this magic, this right here. So when I save this and rerun the test, I expect that this might actually work. So let's see. Self is not defined. Right. Socket got an unexpected keyword argument. File no. Is this in the test? In the null version? Null socket. Yes, family file no, perhaps. Okay, so this actually works. Time to integrate. Next, I remove the path argument in the server, which is no longer used. Time to integrate. The final step of this solution is to have the server listen script spawn child processes in an infinite loop. I create the infinite loop and I'm confident that it'll work. Time to integrate. Now, there's a new issue with the server test. For some reason, the server in test mode doesn't shut down and the test hangs. So integration tests like these are very difficult to get right and they are often flaky. I kill the server explicitly in the test and hope that it will do for now. Time to integrate. Let's see if this actually works now. Because now we have a loop that restarts the server accept process without closing the socket. So now, if we run these two at the same time, they should both be responded to. So let's see, bam, bam. Yeah, and it works. And just to make sure it wasn't a timing luck, 1, 2. Same thing here. So, yeah, now we have actually solved the problems. Now the socket stays open at all times and all requests are responded to. I integrated my code 10 times in about an hour. So the average duration between integrations was therefore about 6 minutes. As a result, when something went wrong, there were very few sources of errors, and I could quickly find out what the problem was. This tweet by Jeepa Hill inspired me to work in smaller steps. The reason you need good tools for merge conflicts is that you have manual merges. The reason you have manual merges is that your steps are too big. The reason your steps are too big is because you think bigger steps are more efficient. They're not. Pass it on. I also feel like Richard Spindler. Working in small steps feels like a secret superpower. You almost never break something. It's hard to explain to someone who's never tried and embraced the principle. Hopefully, I've inspired you to try working in smaller steps. And who knows, maybe you will end up feeling this superpower. I'll see you in 1 week.